The waves whispered against the shore with the gentleness of a lullaby, as if the ocean hadn't swallowed men whole just the night before. Mira stood at the edge of the tide, her bare feet sinking into the wet sand, eyes on the horizon. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky was softening, bruised purple light leaking into the edges of night. Another day in hiding. Another day trying to pretend she didn't feel hunted. Her breathing was calm, trained. Every inhale measured, every exhale silent. Even now, in a supposed safe town buried far from the noise of her past, she couldn't shake the instincts. They were etched into her bones like the scars on her shoulder. Some people forget the war once they leave it. Others carry it like a heartbeat. A distant bark broke the stillness. She turned, already knowing it was Callie's mutt. That dog had more lung than sense. Sure enough, the woman herself appeared moments later, wrapped in a loose jacket, carrying 2 paper cups. "You look like hell," Callie called out, walking up with a half-smile. "Didn't sleep again?" Mira took the coffee, without a word. A small gesture of peace, routine. Callie didn't ask more than that. She had learned that Myra's silences meant more than most people's monologues. They walked together along the beach in quiet. Seagulls dipped and spun in the morning draft, and far out on the water, a freighter ghosted along the horizon. Myra's gaze fixed on it. Something in its slow, unnatural drift set her teeth on edge. "You ever think about leaving?" Callie asked. Mira didn't answer right away. She took a sip, then finally said, "What would I find? Another place to hide." "You don't always have to be hiding." "Don't I?" Mira said quietly. Callie glanced sideways at her, but didn't press. She knew better. Everyone in town knew Mira had come from somewhere brutal, but no one knew the details. That was part of the agreement. She helped fix generators, treated wounds when the doc was out, and no one asked what those scars on her back were from. Back home, if that word still meant anything, Mira had been something else. Recon, extraction, sabotage. She'd lived in shadows and silence, trained to disappear before her breath could fog a window. Her last mission had gone off-book, and everything had turned to ash after that. They'd told her brother Sam had gone dark. Official reports said presumed dead, but Mira had read between the lines. Someone had used him to get to her. She just didn't know who. Not yet. Later that day, she wandered into the small town's market, blending with the tourists who had come for the remote beaches and piney air. Her eyes scanned every corner out of habit, noting exits, watching faces. Most people ignored her, but not the man near the fish stall. New face, too clean, sunglasses despite the overcast sky. His gaze tracked her, not with curiosity, but calculation. Myra's spine stiffened. She didn't stop, didn't falter. Instead, she moved into the hardware shop and vanished through a back exit, looping twice before returning home by an indirect route. Inside, she bolted the door, pulled the shades, and opened the floor panel beneath her bed. Her fingers found the cold edge of a steel case. She hadn't wanted to go back to that part of herself, the part that used silencers instead of words. But something was shifting. She could feel it, the same way birds feel storms before clouds ever gather. That night, she took her usual walk by the cliffs. The ocean was roaring louder now, winds rising as storm warnings flashed on her weather app. She welcomed the isolation. Up here, no one could sneak up behind her, without the earth itself betraying them. A faint buzzing reached her ears. High, mechanical. Drone. Mira dropped into the tall grass and scanned the sky. There, just a flicker of movement against the clouds. She watched it long enough to mark its pattern, then retreated. By the time she reached her cabin, the wind had picked up. Leaves scattered across the porch, the scent of rain sharp in the air. She entered, locking up behind her, heart pounding not from fear, but from certainty. The game had started. At 2:43 a.m., she woke with a start. The dog was barking again, loud, insistent. She grabbed her flashlight and stepped outside. The light caught on something at the edge of the woods. A shape. She froze, holding her breath. Then the shape moved fast. Mira didn't wait. She turned off the flashlight and slid back inside. Her hand went straight to the weapon case. The gun felt familiar. Too familiar. 5 minutes later, she stepped outside again. No light, no sound. The barking had stopped. The night was still. Too still. She found the dog near the base of a tree, breathing in shallow wheezes. Mira knelt beside it, fingers brushing over its side. Poison. She swore softly. This wasn't a message. It was a test. Someone wanted to see how fast she'd react. She buried the dog before sunrise. By then, the storm had begun to roll in properly, wind howling like something alive. But it was inside the house, not outside, that the real storm had begun. She turned on the emergency radio. Dead air. Laptop wiped. So, no signal, not even emergency. Whoever had found her wasn't playing around. She stared at her reflection in the window. Pale face, sharp eyes. The woman staring back wasn't just hiding anymore. She was preparing. Still, she didn't know where the attack would come from or how deep the betrayal might run. But she knew this. Someone had killed her brother to send a message. Now, it was her turn to respond. And she would. Just not in words. The wind howled louder as she closed the final latch on her door, weapon in hand, her eyes like glass, unbreakable and cold. The next time someone came for her, they wouldn't leave. Not alive. The first blow came without warning. A sharp crack split the night, which shattering as Myra's front door exploded inward. She rolled from the floor to her feet, her senses instantly live, adrenaline snapping her into motion. 3 figures burst through the frame, dressed in matte black, their faces hidden beneath sleek helmets. Tactical, professional. She ducked behind a corner of the hallway, just as suppressed gunfire tore splinters from the walls. She moved fast, drawing them away from the back of the cabin. The space was tight, no room for error. Her body remembered what her mind had buried. How to move without sound, how to kill without hesitation. She threw a broken chair leg down the stairs to bait them, then slid to the kitchen window and dropped into the dark. She hit the ground hard, pain knifing through her ankle, but she kept running. The storm hadn't broken yet, but the air was thick with it. Every leaf shimmered with static. She tore through the woods behind the cabin, ducking low as footsteps pounded behind her. These weren't amateurs. They were spacing themselves, boxing her in. She took a hard left, slipped down the ravine, and plunged into the shallow creek at the bottom. The cold water shocked her system, but the sound masked her retreat. She counted 2, no, 3 men still behind. At least one had infrared. She could feel the red gaze sweeping through the trees like a vulture's eye. She ran until her lungs burned, then dropped behind a fallen log, breath shallow, muscles still, her hand pressed against her side. Warmth, blood. She hadn't even felt the hit. The pain came now, late but searing. She ignored it. Pain was data. You used it or you died with it. The footsteps paused above. Someone spoke. A voice filtered through a voice modulator. Targets injured. Push her toward the shoreline. Confirm recovery. No kill order. Her jaw clenched. They wanted her alive. That was worse. A crack of thunder tore across the sky, masking her crawl. She moved in rhythm with it, reaching the edge of the woods where the trees gave way to sand. The beach stretched ahead, wind howling over the waves. No cover, no help. Then she saw it, an old lifeguard station, half buried in dunes. She sprinted. No time for subtlety. Gunfire snapped through the night, chasing her. She slid behind the building just as rounds punched into the wooden slats. She pressed her back against the wall, chest heaving. Blood dripped from her sleeve, tracing rivulets down her arm. Her body was failing. One mistake, and she'd be dead. The enemy approached slowly, calculated. They were her mirror image, trained for pursuit, not confrontation. But they didn't know her the way Sam did, the way her brother used to say, "You don't break, you burn through." She took a broken shard of metal from the station floor and gripped it tight. No time for elegance. When the first soldier rounded the corner, she lunged. The impact rattled her bones. The metal bit into flesh. He dropped, gurgling, and she snatched his sidearm before the second man appeared. One shot, low, shattered kneecap. Another, center mass. 2 down. Then pain bloomed white-hot across her back as the third grabbed her from behind, wrenching her to the ground. Her head slammed into the wooden deck. Stars exploded behind her eyes. His knee pressed into her spine, gun cold against her neck. Mission over, the voice growled. Mira reached for the only weapon left, memory. Sam's voice echoed from a distant mission, whispering in her mind. When they think you're finished, let that be the last mistake they ever make. She twisted hard, dislocating her shoulder to slip from the hold, and smashed the butt of the pistol into the soldier's throat. He crumpled, choking. Then darkness took her. She came to an sterile, echoing room, stripped of weapons and warmth. Her shoulders screamed with every breath. Restraints bit into her wrists, cold metal against bloodied skin. Fluorescent lights buzzed above. Cameras tracked her with lazy precision. Across from her stood a man in a gray suit. No armor, no mask, just a familiar smirk that dragged violence to her throat. "Keller," she said, voice hoarse. "Hello, Mira." He smiled like a wolf. "You look tired." She didn't answer. Her mind raced, calculating distance, exit routes, guards. None visible. Likely 2 behind the mirror glass. "I'm impressed," he continued. "Most people will be dead by now, but you were always resourceful." She stared at him. "You killed Sam." Keller's smile didn't fade. "He made a choice, just like you did. Disobedience comes with consequences. You used him to get to me. And here you are." Her hands flexed against the restraints. "Why? Why now?" "You left unfinished business. Certain files. Certain truths. Someone out there still thinks you're a liability." I disagreed. "I think you're useful. You don't get to use me. You don't have a choice." His words were acid, but Mira felt something shift inside her, not rage. Something colder, sharper. "I'm going to kill you," she said. It wasn't a threat. It was prophecy. Keller only chuckled. "You're bleeding out in a chair. Be realistic." "Realistic," she echoed, "was what killed Sam. This," she looked him dead in the eye, "is personal." Later, after the sedation wore off, she woke up on cold stone, somewhere underground. Her wrists were raw, her body bruised, but the fire inside her had crystallized. She found a weakness in the wall. The air vent too small for most, but not for someone broken thin by war. She slipped through steel and darkness, re-emerging into night, into thunder, into freedom. By dawn, she was crawling through sand again, her wounds reopened, the beach empty but for gull tracks and sea foam. Her blood mixed with salt and grit. She had nothing but breath and will. But it was enough, because now she knew the face of the man responsible. And she would not stop until Keller's world ended in the same silence her brother had died in. She collapsed under the growing light, eyes fixed on the sky, lips curved, not in peace, but in promise. Let them come. She was done running. The old barn stood crooked against the edge of the horizon, its skeletal frame half sunk into the weeds like a wounded animal. Mira crouched in the shadows of a collapsed silo nearby, eyes fixed on the building. She tracked a signal here, a ghost frequency buried beneath military encryption. One Sam had created as a failsafe. It pulsed faintly through the device she cobbled together from the ruins of a stolen radio, a compass needle drawn to the past. Her breath steamed in the early morning chill. Every limb ached from the journey. Days on foot, barely sleeping, surviving on stolen rations and rainwater. But the pain was useful. It kept her awake, alert, reminded her she was still alive, and more importantly, that Keller hadn't won. She slipped out from the brush and approached low, zigzagging through overgrowth and rusting equipment. Crows stirred on the roof as she reached the side entrance and slipped inside. The air reeked of damp hay and oil. It was silent, save for the creak of wood and the faint buzz of power from somewhere deep within. Each step was deliberate. She passed forgotten tools, shattered crates, and walls scribbled with faded chalk markings, coordinates, coded phrases, fragments of Sam's mind. They hadn't broken him. Not completely. Somewhere inside this place, he'd left her something. A sound stopped her cold. Soft, mechanical, a camera. It pivoted in the corner. Just once. tracking her. Mira froze. If Keller had gotten here first, it was a trap. But then, click, the feed died. Power cut from within. Someone else was here. She moved fast now, following the buzz down to the sublevel. The stairs groaned under her weight. As she reached the bottom, a heavy door slid open with a sluggish moan. Behind it, fluorescent lights flickered on, illuminating a single steel desk and a monitor surrounded by wires. On screen, a video loop began to play. Her brother's face appeared, tired, gaunt, but alive in the moment it was recorded. Mira, if you're seeing this, I'm likely dead. Or worse. You were right not to trust anyone. Keller, he's not just cleaning up loose ends. He's building something. Not military. Corporate. Underground. People like us, soul for parts, minds, data. There's a facility. Off-grid. Arctic sector. Code-named Red Veil. That's where they took me. If I didn't make it, burn it. Burn it all. The screen went black. Mira stood motionless, fingers trembling against the desk. He'd known. He'd planned for this. And now the truth lay in front of her, jagged and seething. Keller hadn't just killed Sam. He'd repurposed him. The Red Veil wasn't just a name. It was a prison, a lab, a graveyard of identities erased and rebuilt to serve something larger, something faceless and vile. She took everything, drives, blueprints, a map etched into the underside of the desk, and torched the rest. The fire roared up the walls, smoke swallowing the barn. She didn't look back. By the time the sun cleared the hills, Mira was already gone. She needed transport, and she knew just the person. It took a day to find Callie. The woman lived off the main grid now, deep in the pine forest, ever since the first attack. Mira arrived at dusk, battered and bone-thin, but resolute. Callie opened the door, rifle in hand, but her expression shifted when she saw the look in Myra's eyes. She stepped aside wordlessly. Inside, they sat with the silence of soldiers who had nothing left to explain. "I need to get north," Mira finally said, "beyond the civilian perimeter." Callie exhaled. "You're talking about Black Ice territory. Uncharted, no aid. You go up there, you don't come back." "I'm not planning to come back," Mira said. Something flickered in Callie's face. A quiet hurt. "What did you find?" "They didn't just kill him. They rewired him. Used him. And others. It's not over." Callie nodded once. "Then let's end it." They left at dawn in a stolen vehicle wrapped in blackout mesh. Through ghost towns and border fences, dodging drones, bribing smugglers. The road north was more rumor than reality. Torn maps and fading memories. Eventually, the green faded to ice. White stretched in every direction like a blank page. But Mira could feel it. Beneath the surface, the red veil pulsed like a heartbeat. Artificial. Rotten. They ditched the vehicle near a frozen inlet. The rest of the approach on foot. Each breath crystallized in the air. Every step felt like a countdown. By the third day, they found it. A ridge of stone shaped unnaturally, veined with dark metal. Antennas disguised as rock spines. The entrance was buried beneath meters of snow and steel, but Callie had brought explosives. Mira did the rest. They breached the outer shell in silence. The facility beneath was a hollow cathedral of chrome and light. Too clean, too quiet. Inside, the walls pulsed with faint red glow, like veins. Mira moved like a shadow. Callie on her flank, both armed, both ready. They passed holding cells lined with glass. Some empty, others not. Faces stared out from the other side. Blank, twitching, mouths moving without sound. Men and women once like her. Like Sam. One pressed his hand to glass. His eyes flickered, momentarily lucid. A name was carved into his palm. Sam. Myra's knees buckled. Callie caught her, whispering, "We don't leave anyone." But Myra's gaze was locked on the next door. She pushed it open and stepped into the heart of the machine. Keller stood at the center. He didn't wear armor now. Just the same gray suit, clean and calm. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said. Mira raised her weapon. "I built this," he said, gesturing around. "A place where people like you don't have to die pointlessly. We use what you are. Improve it. You murdered my brother, she said. I elevated him. She pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. He smiled. EMP field. You know me, Mira, always thinking ahead. I know you, she said, stepping forward. You're the last mistake I'll ever make. She hurled the blade, Callie's backup, a flick of silver light. It sank deep into his throat. Keller gurgled, staggered, and fell. The lights around them dimmed. Somewhere, alarms began to wail. Callie was already at the control console. We don't have long. Get them out, Mira said, nodding to the cells. And you? I finish it. As Callie moved, Mira turned to the main server, the memory core, a tower of glass and data. She lit the charges with hands steady as stone. The walls trembled, the veil cracked, and Mira stood there, finally still as the fire swallowed the ghosts. The snow was falling when the smoke finally cleared. Flakes drifted gently through the broken remains of what had once been the Red Veil facility. Concrete slabs jutted out of the ice like crooked tombstones. Twisted beams smoldered among the ruins. The northern sky, once veiled in darkness, was now a bruised gray, slowly brightening with the approach of dawn. Callie stood at the edge of the crater, wind whipping strands of hair across her face. Her coat was torn, her sidearm empty, but her eyes remained fixed on the scorched wreckage below. Mira had not emerged. For a moment, the silence pressed too heavily. Then movement stirred at the rim. From the smoke, Mira stumbled forward, bloody, burned, but unbroken. Callie rushed down the incline, catching her just before she collapsed. You're alive, she breathed, barely believing it. Mira gave a crooked smile through cracked lips. Unfortunately, they sat together for a long while as the fire cooled. Around them, the rescued survivors, those once wired into Keller's twisted machinery, huddled in thermal blankets, silent, confused, some weeping, others just staring at the white nothingness around them. Most had no names anymore, no memories, just fragments. But fragments could be enough. One of the survivors, a man with sunken eyes and a scar running across his scalp, approached Mira. In his hands, he held a small data core, partially scorched but intact. He held it out, trembling. They said it was him. Sam. Mira took the device slowly. Cold metal bit into her palm. She didn't speak, just nodded. Later, by a fire they built from broken equipment and dry roots, she sat with the core in her lap. She hadn't plugged it in yet. She wasn't sure she was ready. Callie handed her a cup of broth. When we get back to civilization, we'll get them help. Names, identities, memories if we can. Mira nodded faintly. That place, it was built to erase people. Turn them into assets, code, ghosts. Callie stared into the flames. You stopped it. For now. Mira looked toward the horizon. But Keller was a symptom, not the disease. You think someone else will pick up where he left off? I know they will. Callie was quiet. What do you want to do? Mira watched the survivors, their thin silhouettes outlined by firelight. They'll need protection. And the others, there's no way that was the only facility. If Red Veil existed, there's more. Hidden. Then we find them, Callie said. Mira finally looked at the core in her hand. Sam left me this for a reason. Maybe there's more than pain inside. Maybe there's a path. Callie nodded. When you're ready. The wind picked up again. In the distance, the faint rumble of approaching aircraft could be heard. Rescue teams, drawn by the beacon Callie had activated once the fires had died. The cavalry always came late. But this time it was enough. Mira rose slowly, her limbs stiff, her back aching, and looked toward the survivors. I don't know who I am anymore, one of them said, a young woman with frostbitten fingers. Mira met her gaze, steady. You're someone who survived. The woman nodded slowly, a faint ember lighting behind her eyes. As the aircraft descended, Mira turned to Callie. We can't go back, she said. Not really. No, Callie agreed. But we can go forward. The wind blew harder now, scattering ash and snow together in the air. By the time the rescue teams landed, Mira had tucked the core deep into her coat, and the fire was out. The ruins of Red Veil would be buried again soon beneath snow and silence, but the war reveal would not be forgotten. She had bled, She had burned, she had been broken, but she had taken something from them they could never reclaim. Revenge. And she wasn't done yet.